Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Sodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing the 10th canto, 20th chapter, and the text for today is text 44. And this canto is entitled The Rainy Season and Autumn. Right now we're in the autumn section, so we'll chant responsively. Akhanda Mandala Vyoma Ararajoda Ganam Shash Yata Yata Padi Krishna Ritsni Chakravato Bhuvi Akhanda Mandala Vyoma. Oh, so Vyomi, sorry. Rajodu Go Nam Shash. Oh, Shashi, sorry. Sorry, I typed it all incorrectly. Yata Yata Padi Krishna Vrishni Chakravato Bhuvi Akhanda Mandala Vyoma Rarajodu Ganai Shashi Yata Yata Padi Krishna Vrishni Chakravato Bhuvi Akhanda Mandala Vyomni Ruru Jodu Ganai Shashi Yata Yata Pati Krishna Vrishni Chakravato Bhuvi. Please chant. Khanda Mandala Vyomni Rajodu Ganai Shashi Yata Yadu Pati Krishna Chakravato Bhuvi Kandala Mandala Vyomi Rajodi Ganai Shashi Yata Yada Pati Krishna Vrishni Chakravato Bhuvi Kandala Mandala Vyomni Rajana Ganai Shashi Yata Yada Pati Krishna Vrishni Chakravato Bhuvi Akhanda Mandala Vyomni Rajadu Ganai Shashi Yata Yata Bhakti Krishna Vrishni Chakravato Bhuvi. And the word for word translation. Akhanda, unbroken. Mandala, its sphere. Vyomni, in the sky. Raraja, shone forth. Uduganai, along with the stars. Shashi, the moon. Yata, as. Yadupati, the master of the Yadu dynasty. Krishna, Lord Krishna. Vrishni Chakra, by the circle of Vrishnis. Avrita, surrounded. Bhuvi, upon the earth. And the translation for text 44 by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada is as follows. The full moon shone in the sky, surrounded by stars, just as Sri Krishna, the Lord of the Yadu dynasty, shone brilliantly on the earth, surrounded by all the Vrishnis. Purport. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that in Vrindavan, the full moon is eternally risen. And the full moon is like the full manifestation of the absolute truth, Sri Krishna. When he was manifest on earth, Lord Krishna was surrounded by prominent members of the Vrishni dynasty, such as Nanda, Upananda, Vasudev, and Akrura. Om Jnanatimandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Rampadaswami Iti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it's a relatively short verse. So let's proceed. So there's this full moon. Oh, yes. Oh, all right. Thank you. Okay. I need to bring it down just a little bit. Okay. So there's the full moon, which is the word that's used is akhanda, which translates into being unbroken, and there's mandala, which is the sphere. So, according to a regular definition of the moon, there's an understanding that it's a heavenly body that revolves around the earth from west to east. And this takes place once in 27 1/3 days with reference to the stars, and once in 29 1/2 days with reference to the sun. And the moon, this heavenly body, this accompanies the earth in the yearly revolution about the sun, and it's reflecting the sun's light. So this is the regular understanding of the moon. And this regular understanding also mentions that the moon has a diameter of 2,160 miles, and its distance from the Earth is 238,857 miles. So these are like regular understanding on a sort of measurable level, the particular functioning of the moon and its relationship to the Earth. So what's mentioned in this particular verse is that the sphere of the moon is unbroken. So it would indicate that the appearance of the moon as it appears at a particular time of the month. So usually there's, in the Western calendar, one sees that there's a new moon, a half moon, a full moon, an old moon, the first quarter and the last quarter. So the moon's appearance here, that's mentioned in the verse, is the full moon, meaning that the orb is unbroken into spheres. So it's complete. It's a perfect orb. So with reference to Krishna speaking of the moon, there's a whole new perspective. So that particular perspective is this. He states that, and these are his words, the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of the whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. So that's from Bhagavad Gita 15:12. So a much more personalized view of the moon, and Krishna himself stating the origin of the moon being from him. So the emphasis on the part of Krishna is to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity, because that's the fire part, at least in our usage, is coming from him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you can see that this is a very different perspective from the mathematical, geographical, location-wise perspective of the moon. And in fact, if one's appreciating Krishna as the maintainer of the material world, or by appreciating even this information that Krishna is giving, it actually means that one is moving, and this is explained by our acharyas, one is actually moving from being in an ignorant position to being in a position of knowledge. So it's a huge component that's missing in the regular definition of the moon by geographical mathematical description. And in fact, if one shifts one's concepts in life, perhaps from this dry explanation of the moon's appearance and movement, to one of understanding that the splendor of the moon and sun is coming from the Supreme Lord, one in fact begins, one could say, one's Krishna consciousness. So it's a huge shift to take Krishna's particular definition of the moon and putting the focus he puts on it, the origin and the particular magnificence of the moon. And this idea that it's actually this kind of shift in one's concept of the moon, Srila Prabhupada in his commentary from this verse that I've quoted of Krishna speaking of himself as the origin of the moon. He says that actually there's even a generalization one can make, and that generalization is that there are different universes and solar systems with different suns, different moons, and different planets. But that in each universe, there's only one sun. And so this is a particularly important point. For the explanation for Krishna's statement that the great luster or brilliance of the sun is coming from him is that actually the sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence from the spiritual sky that's actually coming from Krishna. So it's again a very narrow perspective to merely see one universe, one sun, and some idea of the distance of the sun from the earth and the rotation. It's an extremely limited perspective, denying the existence of the spiritual sky and the effulgence coming from there, and the sun therefore emitting that spiritual effulgence. So if one were wanting to assist oneself in moving one's concepts of life in a Krishna conscious direction, one can take Srila Prabhupada's explanation for this spiritual effulgence coming from Krishna, where he says it's actually by Krishna's kindness that actually there's the existence of the moon and the sun. Because if one takes what the function of the moon and the sun is, one can see that merciful aspect, the kindness aspect of Krishna, his particular quality is also in the whole equation. And this is borne out by the fact that it's the moon that's giving nourishment to all the vegetables. Like I regularly through May through October go to the farmer's market, and I'm always quite amazed. There's a particular farmer that doesn't use any chemicals on anything, and the sheer variety of vegetables, and they all look so lush and green and exuberant. And so that beauty of those vegetables is due to the nourishment that was received from the moonlight. So, and of course, by his kindness, Krishna's kindness, there's the sun, which is the source of electricity, which allows for the preparation of those foodstuffs. So it's actually by his kindness that it becomes possible even to sustain one's existence. Because it's possible to live through the sunlight and the moonshine. So certainly it's a major shift in concepts to start to acknowledge the source of one's existence and also the dependence one has on Lord Krishna. And that particular verse, Yad aditya gatam tejo jagat basyate kilam sachadramsi yak chagno tat tejo vidhi manakam. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he states that this comparison is of the full moon to the is comparable to the full manifestation of the absolute truth. So this is from a commentary in Sarita Darshini by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And I'm going to make a connection because Arjuna himself had been interested in hearing of the divine opulences by which Krishna pervades this world. And the reason Arjuna wanted to know was that he wanted to be able to remember Krishna while being in this world, or at least assist persons to be able to remember Krishna in this world. So Krishna's opulence, or his profusion, his magnificence, his abundance, is visible through his energies. And he presents those energies, and this is particularly in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, because it's based on Arjuna's inquiry, because he's wanting to know what are those means by which one can remember Krishna, all on that idea of, how one makes a shift in one's life concepts. So Krishna, in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he refers to a group of things in this world, and then he shows how he's the prominent object among those items in the group. So it's very philosophical, because generally one can take similar items and then one categorizes them. It's sort of, it's a natural philosophical method used. So Krishna does that, and so he does this to help the regular person who's moving about in the world to be able to appreciate things in reference to material nature. So he says, so here's an example of how he does this grouping and categorization. Of the Adityas, I'm Vishnu. Of lights, I am the radiant sun. Of the Marits, I am Marichi, and among stars, I am the moon. So that's Bhagavad Gita 10:21. So by this kind of statement, one can understand that among stars, the moon is the most prominent. And because that's what Krishna says, and among stars, I'm the moon. And this implies that the moon is one of the stars. It was brought up yesterday in class. And the statement also implies that the stars twinkling in the sky reflect the light of the sun in the same way that the moon is reflecting the light of the sun. So, being that the moon is the most prominent of the stars twinkling in the sky at night, that moon represents Krishna. So this is, the breakdown of how Krishna establishes his prominence amongst a particular category of objects. So in this case, of course, it's celestial objects. So in this particular verse, it's by the reflection of the sun that the moon illuminates. And that's the same scenario for the stars. So Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan, he indicates something interesting. He says that the genitive case is used to indicate an outstanding member of a group. So like here, Krishna says the moon is, the outstanding member of the stars. And sometimes he indicates a relationship. And that is that he's the lord of the constellations. So if one looks further at this idea that, one can shift one's concepts in life, Krishna conscious ones, Lord Brahma explains that there's an important factor to bear in mind. So this is from the 4th canto in the 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 31st verse. Lord Brahma says this: "My dear Lord, your personality and eternal form cannot be understood by any person who's trying to know you through the different processes of acquiring knowledge. Your position is always transcendental to the material creation, whereas the empiric attempt to understand you is material. as are its objectives and instruments. So it's almost like a commentary on that initial definition of the moon in terms of its geographical distance from the Earth and its frequency of orbiting. So if the instruments one uses it in order to understand absolute truth or Krishna are all material, for example, one's just using material intelligence. Okay, I'm going to utilize these particular instruments in order to measure distance. Oh, I'm going to calculate the frequency of something. So that's sort of material intelligence. So if one's using that kind of intelligence and a material process to try and understand Krishna, then that actually is a futile means. And the reason this is so is that one's trying to understand a personality who's beyond this creation. He's beyond the creation of this material world. So to understand him requires a method that is transcendental. That method is Krishna consciousness. And Krishna puts it this way himself. And these are his words from Bhagavad Gita 1855. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So it's the actual engagement, the constant endeavor for realizing oneself as a soul that allows for this understanding of Krishna. So even this understanding of him being the moon requires this particular kind of engagement in a process connected to him. And the process also means that one has to turn away from a worldly sense gratification or those activities that are merely of a sense gratificatory nature. And one has to sincerely absorb oneself in spiritual practices and behavior. So this actually isn't a simple thing. I mean, I was reflecting on this a great deal recently. This idea of sincerity in one's absorption in spiritual practices and behavior. I mean, there's constant monitoring of oneself, that one is actually performing that engagement with Krishna in a conscious, thoughtful, careful, caring kind of way. And it requires a good amount of self-monitoring. So, I'm appreciating that actually it's a process that requires a great deal of attention. So, nobody can enter into his abode in one's individuality and engage in his association and render service unto him quite so easily. So this is so because this devotional service requires that one understands the transcendental qualities and opulences of the Supreme Lord in truth. That's how it's put, in truth. So it's not theoretical, it's not abstract, it's not that one hears it and, it sort of goes, one hears and forgets about it, or one sort of vaguely knows it. It's not like that. It's that in actual fact, one truly sees it as like that, and one truly appreciates those facts as actuality. So there's actually a stage in one's progression in devotional life that one is genuinely in that kind of position, and that's called the Brahmabhuta stage, or one is free from material concepts. So it's an ongoing refinement of one's consciousness, and at one point, one actually loses those material concepts. And that's supposed to be when actual direct engagement is there. Or it's said that's when devotional service begins. It means that one can actually hear properly about the Supreme Lord. It's so one's consciousness isn't constantly diverted by absorption in some material concepts, or having to work through material concepts to move to a spiritual concept, or not have one's mind be absorbed in some enjoyments of a material, worldly nature. So it takes time and a lot of monitoring of oneself. So, so particularly what happens is that something on this kind of hold that worldly sense gratificatory activities have on one, this kind of greediness for material enjoyment, or even sort of having a kind of lustful, like an excessive desire to enjoy things on the sensorial, material level, that actually disappears. And and it disappears from the heart, because that's where all this kind of holding onto those material concepts, that kind of greediness for material objects or enjoyments resides. So it actually just disappears. That's how it's described. And what replaces that is this actual attachment for the service of Lord Krishna. And it's that attachment that allows one to become free from the contamination. So there's an interplay. And when there's that attachment, then one can understand the Supreme Lord. So then this particular description of Krishna being the moon amongst the stars, it's actually factual. So this all takes place because by transcendental loving service, the devotee is pleasing the Supreme Lord. So because we're dealing with a personality and its engagement in service to him, so his becoming pleased is allowing for material concepts to fall away. It's allowing for attachment for him to develop. And Srila Baladev Vijayabu's son, I was going off a little bit. Actually, it's a service attitude that allows for the Lord to be revealed to the devotee. Bhakti mam abhijanati yavanyat chasni tatvataha tato mam tatvato gnatva vishate tad anantaram. That's Bhagavad Gita 18:55. So it's through bhakti that one realizes the Lord in truth, and one can actually join him. Because here we're reading that Krishna is surrounded by prominent members of the Vishnu dynasty, such as Nanda, Upananda, Vasudeva, and Akura, who are compared to stars in the sky. So, so it's bhakti that brings one to that position. And this state of realizing the Lord and of joining him it is explained as the state of realizing the Atma, or the self. It's a state of being extremely pure, actually. And that means that all those activities that one might have performed that create karma um, have left. And also the associated suffering has left. So it means that one isn't anymore in a position where one is still looking for fulfillment of those material desires. Because those desires just aren't present anymore. So the only desire is actually for Krishna. And Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan, he comments on this particular verse where Krishna is stated in, or on Bhagavad Gita 1854, he comments that at this time, one attains the supreme form of bhakti such that one is directly seeing the Lord. So everything is cleared and one is directly not only engaged in his service, but Krishna is visible to one. And so that's Brahma Bhuta Prasanatmana Sochtina Kanchati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So these were some thoughts on this short verse. It was as much as I could expand it. If there's any thought on the matter, elaboration, further exploration.
I once saw an interesting statistic that I think it's something like 65% of the U.S. population doesn't believe that man landed on the moon. It's like a huge percentage, and they have these videos which show that it's a staged event because they've got shadows going in the wrong direction. And it doesn't add up. So it was if we believe that, then it's a really big hoax. Prabhupada said that you go to the moon, and then what was it? That one devotee, he lost confidence at that point and left. I can't remember his name. He was a servant. It was in England when it took place. I think when they were staying at John Lennon's place.
Thank you very much for that comment. Yes, the the idea that one is physically attaining the moon planet does seem very odd by virtue of the fact that I mean, everything that Krishna has said in terms of actually being the moon, and that the process for attaining him is the process of bhakti, it seems very unlikely that one would physically attain the moon so easily through some mechanical means, a rocket or a satellite ship. And I recall growing up in that time when there were these supposed moon landings, and I recall reading that at least one or two of those astronauts did commit suicide. So, what was the reason that they had to take their own lives? I mean, possibly it is this one of, it all been set up. Yes, yes, I recall reading. Yes, I recall reading. Yeah, that would be one possibility if this, because it doesn't seem factual that it's possible because of what Krishna says of what's required to achieve the moon, which means achieving him. It can't possibly be done through physical means. So, yeah, I recall reading that as a child, because I always used to read a lot of things. Yeah.
This is a challenge for many people that grew up with Western, or even now in India, that education is very much science-based.
Yeah.
And in the early 80s, I was in the Philadelphia temple, and Sariput Prabhu was on the BTG staff, and he was there. And one time I went with him to a preaching program. I think there was a preaching center in Delaware. And we were talking on the way, and I asked him, because of your education, was it more difficult for you to become a devotee? He said, well, actually, most devotees, when they join, they have maybe one or two big doubts. But I had thousands that I had to overcome. And, you know, he continued his amazing service for so many years and gave a lot of insights, on Vedic cosmology, which is it's a challenge for most of us to really, one senior devotee was telling me, I just kind of just accept it. I don't try to really understand it. But but there's a lot of it's this contamination that we're carrying from our material education.
Yes. Yes.
That kind of makes sense to the materially conditioned mind. What they present in science. But it's not just that. But I've seen others afflicted by the scientific, I was going to say disease, but or syndrome. Just sometimes it inhibits their ability to really give their hearts to bhakti. They want proof that it will work. There's this one doctor, what's his name? He's from Denver, Gopinath. He's a Ayurvedic and naturopathic physician who works for the VA, Veterans Administration Hospital in Boulder. And so he did research on the efficacy of chanting Hare Krishna and how it actually reduces stress levels. Just like Dear Govinda, his PhD thesis was on how chanting Hare Krishna, he got people that weren't chanting before, and then they noticed substantial changes in how as we say, the modes of material nature were affecting them. And the same thing, this is something he monitored, what's that nerve in the chest, which
is it the vagus nerve?
The vagus?
Vagus.
Yeah, that's it. And so this determines, or allows us to understand heart rate, I think. And so then you can see a very definite correlation between chanting Hare Krishna and the reduction of stress. And of course, we hear this, but do we really believe it? Like when we're in a highly distressed circumstance, do we actually have confidence that if we cry to the holy name, things will eventually work out and we won't? There's a quote that, I might have mentioned this in a class, but Sridhar Swami, our ISKCON Sridhar Swami, not the previous Acharya. Now he's the previous Acharya.
Yes.
But
very wonderful Maharaj.
He would quote Lord Buddha, of all personalities. And Lord Buddha would say that distress is compulsory.
Oh.
Dukkhalayam shashvatam. It's compulsory. Suffering is optional. But suffering is optional. So there's a distinction between the two. Suffering is the reaction that can come from distressful circumstances, but we can choose not to suffer. We can see this as Krishna's loving exchange directed towards us, and actually feel his presence and feel very blissful in spite of extremely distressful circumstances. That's possible within the realm of bhakti by having deep faith that Krishna is behind everything that takes place in my life, even the distresses, and not get mad at him, and not lose faith in him because of the distresses that have come our way. Oh, woe is me.
Yeah.
how could God do something like this to me? And it's what happens to a lot of religionists. They lose their confidence when the distress comes. But anyway, science, this is what Sariput was asked to do by Srila Prabhupada, by Sri Damodar, to engage their scientific intelligence in Krishna's service, prove the existence of God. But even the whole area of reincarnation, there's like all this evidence. What's this name of this? Many Lives, Many Masters. This is a psychiatrist who was an avid atheist. And then he started doing hypnotic regressions, and he'd take people into their past lives. And it was proof that the person was eternal. He'd lived in previous lives. I remember watching that when Coming Back came out. Years and years ago, there was a movie, a video that accompanied that. And the scientists took this lady from Australia, and she'd gone into a post-hypnotic regression, and started speaking in a French dialect that wasn't even spoken anymore. And they were just like, what? And so they took her to France, and she identified the house in this remote village that she lived in a previous life. And I remember there was, there's, science can be used in a Krishna conscious way, but generally speaking, what it does, it has an impact on our faith, oftentimes because of our conditioning. And it's a big challenge to overcome that in many ways, to really make sense. I was going to say that there was one, if I did say it, there's one senior devotee, when he gets into Vedic cosmology, he doesn't try to understand, he just accepts it. He just, it's just too kind of far out, for his, both of his parents were university professors. His father was a professor of medicine, so very much scientific oriented. Brilliant personality. But so this is something that we all have to somehow or other process. And we offered, there's a devotee by the name of Murari Gopal, who has a PhD in astrophysics, and he worked for the, what's it called? It's there's a space agency in Maryland, just outside of D.C. I can't remember what it's called now. They worked for them for a while, then became a devotee. And I arranged for him to teach a course on Vedic cosmology based upon Sariput's writings. And they have a website, or there's a, I think it's a Facebook group, on Vedic cosmology. So there's an awful lot of discussion that goes on about this. And the Bhaktivedanta Institute kind of been revitalized in Gainesville. Ramatirtha, and there's a whole team of devotees that are just totally into presenting, these understandings. And so it could be extremely helpful for all of us to deepen our faith, just see how Krishna has made these amazing arrangements. And I remember when I was, I went to, took some courses at the University of Vermont, before I joined the movement. I took a geology course because I really liked earth science when I was in high school. And he got into cosmology, and then he said, the more I study, the more I understand that there must be a God. This is a professor, So, because it's just things that just aren't explainable. There's a greater intelligence behind. I was pretty impressed by that. But usually they don't go in that direction. Usually they go more and more atheistic because of the pridefulness that kind of accompanies that kind of brain power. But then you get people like Albert Einstein, he's quoting from Bhagavad Gita, when it was Oppenheimer that quoted from Bhagavad Gita when the first atomic bomb was exploded. That I think didn't he quote Time I Am, the destroyer of all? Anyway, some thoughts.
Oh, thank you very much for the contribution, particularly that scientific training can be challenging for accepting the Krishna conscious perspective. Yeah, I guess the fundamental shift has to do with coming very close to home of thinking, who am I? Because that kind of inquiry opens up a doorway to examining Vedic philosophy. I mean, I was studying philosophy because of teaching, and the particular university professors were constantly using this word of transcendental something, and but the whole way of teaching methodology had to do with leaving everything open-ended because there was no absolute truth. So it was attempting to eliminate a religious component in teaching methodology for teaching philosophy. So everything had to be left open-ended, which meant that hypotheses always existed. And so if one could actually support one's hypothesis and one's reasoning was fairly sound on, material intelligence level, then, it had some weight, whatever one's line of reasoning was.
And you were saying something about how the teaching methodology, you were a teacher of philosophy?
No, when I was studying, I was studying methodology for teaching philosophy.
I see.
So
this is when you were in university?
At university, yes. So, and I was just commenting that those professors were often using the word transcendental, but at the same time, it doesn't fit into what we understand as transcendental or a method to approach Krishna, because what they were highlighting was that everything in using a reasoning methodology had to be open-ended. It meant that if somebody had a better argument, that was equally fine. It's because an absolute truth did not exist. It was explicitly stated.
The Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, one of the reasons that was established because different devotees were going on and getting advanced degrees in philosophy, and some of them would just become bewildered and lose their faith because of what you're describing, just never really accepting an absolute. And so now they all like stick together. And if they start having these problems, then they reveal their mind in confidence to each other to support, their bhakti. But I know one person that was a big leader, a real scholar within a movement that went to Harvard and lost it. So, that's what it breeds is faithlessness.
Yeah. Yeah, in undergraduate years, I was doing archaeology, and then later on, I read the particular books, I guess, the particular section that dealt with early man and evolution. I guess it was, I forget, it's quite a while since I've read the particular books. I don't know if it was Sadhaputta or devotee that was working with him. But over there, he was highlighting that actually the evidence that was found was sort of molded to fit the existing theory of there being evolution, but in actual fact, it was a skewing of the evidence, direct skewing, and he exposes this because I recall when I studied archaeology, there was a lot of findings, particularly in South Africa, where I was studying of early man and the prevailing theory being an evolutionary one meant that things were evidence that wasn't actually in accord with that was discarded. And Sariputta, I think, highlights that. He actually highlights the particular findings and he puts it into context that the prevailing theory is the evolutionary one. So actually this was not attended to and this was not attended to because he was very familiar with the particular findings. So, yeah.
Eliminated these findings
Correct.
because it didn't support evolution.
Correct, correct. So when I read that, I was so delighted to come across that. Yeah. Gosh, yes. Yes. So it's not actually ethical practice, even on, regular material level. Yeah. So I think we've explored the topic. Thank you so much for your contribution, Janmasmi Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna, thank you everybody for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.